A long time ago, a spacecraft crashed into a town in the North African desert, terrifying all of the people. Thousands of years later, a massive disk of unknown origin is brought to the excavation site and shown to Professor Langford. Together with his little daughter Catherine, the scientist examines the second relic, an iron ring with terrified bones underneath. Our moment when Catherine Langford comes for Dr. Jackson's lecture, she notices that none of his colleagues appear to be interested in the young scientist's unconventional opinions. Jackson appears after the session, and Catherine offers him a job decoding ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. While waiting in the automobile, the elderly woman informs the doctor that her offer is his only chance and that he has no other options. When Colonel Jonathan, Jack O'Neill discovers that General West has asked him to come out of retirement, staff personnel pay a visit to his residence. It allows him to organize his thoughts and remain rational while grieving over his son. Dr. Catherine Langford is waiting for Jackson at the military installation. When he comes, the disc that Dr. Langford remembers from his childhood is shown to the scientists. Dr. Jackson can spot any translation problems by simply looking at the hieroglyphics. He makes text corrections, which annoys the other scholars who have spent decades researching the text. Jackson is perplexed as to why the military was interested in the antique. Colonel O'Neill, the person in command of the clandestine project, is ready to respond to this question once the translation is complete. 2 weeks later, Jackson is still working on the translation of the ring. When he finally finds a newspaper with a photograph of the starry sky, the solution appears on its own. Jackson informs a military commission about his discovery, and the colonel grants him permission to present it. To solve the second phase of the riddle, the scientists use an iron ring that works as a stargate. While analyzing the device, Jackson deciphers the seventh sign, and the scientists begin working on activating the ring. The symbols are placed exactly as the scientist directed, and strange things begin to happen at the bottom. The ground begins to tremor, as a water funnel emerges from the ring's center. As the ring is surrounded by armed personnel, a machine is placed within to collect molecular analyses of its contents. The machine is dragged inside, and sensors detect movement in a distant galaxy on the opposite side of the cosmos. The ring stops operating and the drone's signal abruptly disappears. The second section of the route, which Jackson sees in the images sent to the station by the probe, confirms that the same ring exists far away. Jackson declares his willingness to cross through the gate and gain new information. The leadership agrees to accept the risk after discovering that the military intends to discontinue the experiment, but Jack points out to the general that they have yet to inform the scientists about the petrified bones that do not resemble human remains. Catherine presents the man with an amulet she discovered as a child. The ring is relaunched at the entrance, and Dr. Jackson and the military personnel prepare for an unusual voyage. Jackson journeys through a dizzying tunnel to another planet. The group finds itself in complete darkness at an unexpected location. The desert gang realizes they are in a temple, the entrance to which leads into the desert. When the scientist thoroughly examines the structure, it becomes clear to him that what is in front of them is a large pyramid with multiple moons rising above it. Jackson admits that he can't accomplish it because he isn't adept with technology. However, Jack requests that the scientists construct a gate so that he can return to his house while his soldiers study the unknown civilization till the ring can be started. The military establishes a base and prepares to live in a different society. While his subordinates are setting up, Jack constructs a rocket and conceals it from the troops. Meanwhile, Jackson discovers footsteps on the sand after following their trail. He comes into a gigantic strange beast trapped in the underbrush. As the colonel discovers this, the remainder of the scientist's chocolate bar is given to the beast to assist it. He makes a swift move and departs, bringing Jackson, who is twisted in the rope, with him. After catching up with Jackson, the giant animal's thumb restores his consciousness. The military turns to look around and sees a city under a tent in the middle of the desert. As the locals become aware of the guests, a disturbance begins. Jack sends Jackson ahead to put his skills to use and study the language. When the tribesmen saw the talisman around his neck, they fall on their knees. Despite the fact that Jackson does not speak the indigenous language, the head appears next to the squad after one of the natives goes to summon the elder. Nonetheless, they give him with gifts. In exchange, the scientist gives the elder a candy bar, which is an important first step in establishing contact. The gang treks into the desert with thousands of other humans who are curious about the aliens. Visitors are welcome to the urban area once Neo reports to the base that he is fine. In the evening, a true feast is prepared for the visitors, with a variety of interesting dishes presented. The ritual begins, but is cut short by a honking horn, which sends all of the residents fleeing. When Jack notices the city gates closing, he and his crew open fire, demanding to be allowed out. However, a local lad warns him that a storm is approaching, and the colonel agrees to hide. Jackson tries to ask the elder where they are during dinner, but it turns out that writing is forbidden in the city, so if you become sidetracked by luring him into the company of gorgeous women, you will be in trouble. A girl comes into the scientist's chamber, but Jackson declines. In order to make use of her, the man invites the new acquaintance into the room so they may converse as the older grows apprehensive. As a result, the girl offers to show the guy where they met by sketching symbols on the sand. The scientists detected something on the ring. The surviving campers seek refuge. Throughout the night, the symbol's pyramid, and as a strange sound is heard, the party prepares for combat. As they see a spacecraft descend above them, they draw their weapons. The troops are kidnapped one by one. They don't have time to think about anything, and only one of the officers observes an extraterrestrial towering over him and dressed as an Egyptian dog. Mask even after letting him sample the smokes. A neighbor who regards the fire as a miracle receives a lighter from Jack. When the man reaches for the revolver, the colonel crumbles. Jackson also befriends a local girl who leads him to an underground labyrinth filled with interesting symbols. Communication between the two becomes easier when they acquire a language that they both understand. The troops are brought to the tomb from the cave to some extent. One of them sees a lady emerge from the grave, but the other is already fast asleep. Jack discovers that the base personnel have ceased broadcasting. The males are experimenting with lighters. When they see a subordinate saluting Jack, they all do the same. The colonel attempts to question the men about Jackson's possible whereabouts, but they are unable to converse due to the language barrier. When the child realizes who the colonel is referring to, he frees the animal to go find the man who is having a good time in the dungeon. When Jack finds the scientists, he tells them about the writing on the walls, which states that a certain traveler from a distant galaxy came to our planet eons ago in search of a way to survive. To keep anyone from discovering the truth or considering resisting, he found a kid whose body he had previously inhabited, erected a gate through which to release his people, and then enslaved and sent all of the visitors to work in the mines. They were not permitted to learn to write. When Jackson investigates the walls, he notices a disc that looks like a gate but is missing. The seventh indication is needed for the scholar to activate the ring and escape the region. The gang leaves the city and travels to the camp. Jackson's new girlfriend misses him and feels he is leaving permanently. The gang is unaware that they are being followed by a group of young people who are confused about the reason of the military's presence. The team comes to a halt as Jack discovers the spacecraft at the campsite. He sends the unit inside while advising everyone to be cautious, but once inside, Egyptian dogs begin to send the men away one by one. The rocket that the colonel was supposed to deploy to destroy the gateway is nowhere to be found in case of need. An army of Egyptian soldiers arrives in the center of the hall. As the colonel and Jackson are led inside the throne room, the pyramid above them splits in two. After reducing the men to their knees, the tyrant who stole the missile from the military is exposed to them. The colonel intended to remove them, which irritated the monarch. As he and his guards remove the mask, Jack realizes that other creatures have taken hold of his support in their bodies. Jack attempts to fire, but the guards quickly stop him. The intruder is thrown into the water ditch where the surviving soldiers have been waiting all along. The aliens deployed drones and began firing on the city after removing the jewelry from his neck. As Jack's little friend witnesses this, he weeps for his murdered colleagues, not stopping to spare any old folks or small children. When Jackson awakens, he finds himself in the sarcophagus, and he barely escapes alive. When the two are alone, the scientist informs Jackson that their nuclear missile will return to their world after pursuing the monarch, who has assumed the shape of a woman this time. Because the deity claims to be the creator of the earth, he will undoubtedly destroy it. To save his life and stay in the new world, Jackson must murder the entire gang. As the city's king collects forces for the execution, Shiri convinces his friends that they must finally begin fighting. After receiving warning signs from the hall, Jackson organizes a riot. As he approaches, the gathering of individuals who have been spared by his spear disperse in separate directions. In a sandstorm, the troops must go far from the camp in order to reach a vacant cave where they may shelter with their rescuers. Jack is at a loss for what to do because he is unable to destroy the gate or bring the squad to Earth as directed by his orders. In addition, he is obliged to justify himself in front of his coworkers while deciding what to do with the large group of children. Without a place to go, the colonel turns away from everyone and mulls over his next step, disregarding the family's concerns. concerns. Jackson urges him to seriously consider leaving. The governor switches on the pendant after putting it together. He prepares to go after the convicts after punishing the guard responsible for their escape, while Jackson visits Shori to find out what the problem is. When the two young men notice the adolescents ridiculing them, feelings of love begin to emerge between them. After noticing the youngster scribbling on the wall, the scientist decides to help him and discovers the seventh sign that will lead them home. But first, they must remove the tyrant, which Jack resolves to do on his own. When God sees the caravan, he urges them to get ready to bring a bomb to the Stargate and set off the alarms. During the ensuing shootout, Jack's squad decimates the additional guards. Drones are taking to the skies right now, and the military must defend its use from Hamlet. Jack constructs a rocket as he sprints to the gate, intending to complete the mission and detonate the ring. Jackson is given 7 minutes to open the portal and restore the warriors to their realm. After that, the Divine Guard shoots Shayori, forcing the damsel to tumble. While holding her in his arms, the scientist soars into the portal. The scientists save his companion Shayori, but Jack is left to defend himself against the bombs. The adolescents are hiding outdoors, but one of them does not make it in time and dies on the battlefield. The explosion will take about 3 minutes. A god kidnaps Jackson and plans to slaughter the scientists. As he carries his friend's body to another tomb, Jack fights while observing the passage of time till Jackson reaches the gate. Jack defeats his opponent. There is only a minute remaining, and Colonel Hurley tries to stop the countdown, but nothing occurs. The entire village comes together to save the kidnapped children. When the citizens arrived at the castle and liberated their pals, the two guards put down their weapons. As the deity prepares to flee, a ship ascends into the skies. Jack notices this and enters the villain's chamber with a loud explosive that explodes immediately. Jackson fixes the ring, is happy with the girl he loves, and the adolescents recognize him as their leader. As the military departs on their return voyage, just the Doctor of Science remains in the new planet.